Welcome to Legacy Therapy, the podcast that will teach you, in bite-sized chunks, how to leave a stress-free legacy so loved ones can focus on people, not paperwork, when you become ill or pass away. Here is your host and financial advocate, Stacey Golden-Lisnock.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Legacy Therapy, Planning Techniques for a Stress-Free Legacy. This is Stacey Golden-Lisnock, your financial advocate, and I am here today with Judith M. Sack. And Judith has been an estate planning attorney in Southern California since 1998, right, Judith?
1998.
Okay, great. And she engages in community activities that promote the safety and well-being of seniors and small businesses in the community. And I met Judith through a senior service group that I'm involved in, and so I know she is really active in that area. Can you talk on that maybe just a little bit and see and let us know how that's working out? Because I know seniors are definitely needing your services as well as everyone else, but maybe a little more important for them.
I'd love to. Thank you, Stacey, for the opportunity to tell you about them. So I've been lucky enough to be engaged with Senior Services Group, the Alzheimer's Association, and a couple of other organizations before that, including the local chapter of Reseda Neighborhood Council, Economic Division. And through all of these activities, I've worked hard to and also the Friends of Library Associations, I've worked hard to provide seniors with information about how to protect themselves from financial elder abuse. It's a program that's sponsored by the State Bar of California. In addition, the work with Alzheimer's is an education program that they offer to people suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia and their caretakers. So I've had a lot of opportunities to engage in community activities for seniors. And as you know, our Senior Services Group tries to reach out into the community and provide educational resources, materials, and sometimes supplies. Plus, we have MAPS Charities, which provides assistance to seniors who need all sorts of assistance, whether it be a wheelchair or a walker or assistance getting to the doctor. We've had members who are serve the Meals on Wheels. So we have programs that support that and encourage that. We go into senior centers. We've had a wonderful time. Of course, the pandemic has limited what we can do, but we've been trying to sort of circumvent that and do it other ways where we're providing help to seniors.
And seniors seem to be really gravitating towards it from what I'm hearing about the attendance at these different events. Now it's pretty good.
We've had a lot of very high attendance at most of our events, and it's been very satisfying. Of course, it always depends on what else is on the seniors' plate for that day, but we're grateful that they like to come out and hear and see us too.
Yeah. And what are you finding to be one of the most asked questions by seniors when it has to do with estate planning? Do you have anything in particular?
Well, the common question almost everybody comes in saying is, I want a will. I want a will to take care of everything. So it's usually trying to understand what the limits of each document are and how they can maximize their planning. So that's a common question. Another question is, well, why do I need a will if I'm doing a trust? Or why do I need a trust if I'm doing a will? So that usually is about confusion about what all the documents are. Another area that people are very confused about is, why do all of the people who are going to be their helpers have different titles in each of the documents? So that's like, why is it called a successor trustee in one document, an executor in another, an agent in a third, and so forth. And finally, the biggest questions come in the healthcare documents, where people want to know what their agent can do and not do, and how do they empower their agents.
Yeah. Wow. So do you want to explain those documents a little bit?
Absolutely. I would love to. So first off, let me go back and give a little bit of background about what an estate plan is and why we call it an estate plan, so everybody has a bigger picture as to what's going on. So an estate plan incorporates many, many documents, and the lawyer basically is preparing documents. the client and their helpers, such as the workshop that you have, Stacey, where it enables people to create their document base, the data that they need and that their loved ones are going to need to help them. The attorney is not creating the database. The attorney is creating the legal documents that applies that database. So when a person gathers all of their account information, we attorneys, we don't need to know the account numbers, but we need to know what financial institutions, for instance, need to be referenced in their documents. So we always start with the trust. The trust is the overarching document. If you will, think of it like a million umbrellas all sewn together into one humongous umbrella. And under each little umbrella is a separate document. So we have the trust. It's that overarching document, the humongous umbrella. It covers your well-being, who your team of managers are going to be. We call them successor trustees when the trustee can no longer work. It covers where you want to live, how you want to be cared for, where you want to be cared for if you become incapacitated. It covers conservatorships and avoiding, of course, conservatorships. And of course, finally, transferring your assets when you pass away. The trust then coordinates with all of the other documents. For example, the will. So the will is only viable when you die, right? And that means you have to go to probate. In the trust, you've put hopefully all of your assets in the trust so you never have to go to the probate. But what if you won the lottery and the next day you die? Now, what are you going to do, right? Mm-hmm. We have to have a will to say, okay, probate court, we had this wonderful good fortune, but you need to move it into the trust for us. Or you could have had a lawsuit that was going on and the final judgment didn't come until after you passed away. Same thing. We've had this horrible experience, finally got our judgment, but we forgot to put that lawsuit in the trust. So please, judge, move that to the trust. In life, we have another document that works with the trust and the will and all the other documents, and it's called an assignment of assets to the trust. That document says, I call it the vacuum cleaner document. It says, everything I own is inside the trust. And that is effective and supports both during life and in death. Another key document that many people have heard of is called the power of attorney. And the estate planning attorney that a person is working with is going to give them an option of creating a power of attorney that's only effective currently, or what we call durable. It's effective when we become incapacitated. So for all of these documents, the person has to have capacity to understand what they're doing, to formulate a plan of their, and understand that plan. Of course, they work with their attorney to do that, but they have to have the mental ability to do these things. However, with your trust and your will and your power of attorney, we make them durable, meaning that they continue in force and effect, even if you become incapacitated. Now, the trust and the will, those have power even when you're dead. A power of attorney dies with the person. So it ends when the person dies. So we can make it durable. We can also make it not effective now. We can say, well, I want to empower my agents, but I don't want them to have power now. I want them only to have power if I become incapacitated. I have a stroke, I'm in coma, I'm out of the country, something's wrong with me. That's when we want our power of attorney to have power. Right. So these documents are all a little different, and they cover a wide range of issues, and they all have to relate back and connect to the trust. And then we have that entire second area of documents that govern healthcare. So, for example, the Advanced Healthcare Directive, the HIPAA or authorizations for the release of health information. We have voluntary planning for what if you get dementia and you can no longer eat. I believe one of your guests actually discussed that quite extensively. I think that was Samantha Trad from the Compassion Choices group. That these documents are all, in a good estate plan, in my opinion, coordinated and work together to empower your agents to help you and explain or educate them about the choices that you would make.
Wow. And so when you're going to go to an attorney to get an estate plan, if you're going to get a trust, it includes all of those documents?
Well, every attorney is different. I can't speak for all of my colleagues, but
Okay.
I would say a vast majority of estate planning attorneys will incorporate all of these documents in their estate planning, including, planning for your digital assets. For example, how you sign on to a web page, how you get on to your accounts at the bank online, how you access information on your cell phone. If everybody picks up their cell phone and you put that little password in just to get there, everything on that phone is a digital asset. All the content saved on that phone is a digital asset. So if you need to get into that phone and it's not you, let's say it's your child trying to find all your friends to tell them that you've gotten sick and let them know that you would love the support and encouragement, they need to have access to the content on your phone, the access to your emails. If you pass away and you want people who you don't see on a regular basis to know you're not here, well, one of the common ways of doing that now is through email, but the person has to have access to be able to do that. Those are all things that you empower the people you trust to help you.
So are you saying that you have a piece of paper that gives them access to your email?
Well, you have to do two things. The legal requirement is that you give them a power of attorney for digital assets, or it's incorporated in your traditional power of attorney. Some attorneys do a second document, which is just a separate power of attorney for digital assets. That is the front door, so to speak, for how your agents will demonstrate to the internet service providers, the emails, the cell phone operators, that they have authority to access that information. The more common way that you must do in order to help your agents is to create a password list where you list all the passwords for every website that you go onto, the URL, your sign-in name, your password, and your security questions for every single one, because the common pitfall between giving people your passwords and them being able to access your digital assets is that if they switch the house that they're going on, so you live in, 111 Main Street, they live in 12 Main Street. Well, 12 Main Street has a different internet service provider. So most of your digital assets use your ISP as a way of authenticating you. So your agents will need your security questions in order to be able to authenticate themselves. And of course, that's all the back door. The front door is you write to the company and you say, I'm the agent of so-and-so and I'm taking over and I need to manage their digital assets. But most of us have to use the back door.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I learned something new because this power of attorney for digital assets is something I hadn't heard of yet. And so one of the things that we're recommending in the course that got it together, emergency info file that we've started into the digital assets, is of course having a password manager in place. So a management system. So it's like LastPass or whatever the different ones are. And then you only have to really remember one master password, and then all your passwords are, and the passwords are actually more secure because they're doing random passwords. You're not having to keep using the same ones, which is what people do. That I was interesting to see when I was looking up this subject. They had a list of the most common the most common passwords that people use.
Right.
And I was surprised to see some of them. Like one of them is this QWERTY exclamation point or one exclamation point. Do you know what that is?
QWERTY.
That's the top row of your keypad. Your what is this called? Your keypad.
QWERTY.
Yeah. So QWERTY and then the one and the exclamation point. So apparently that's very common.
Right. So the one thing about those password keepers I would encourage all your clients to do is that they have to remember to write down the password to get into their password keeper. Don't put it on the device that they're using. but they have to write it down in a place where their loved ones can find it. And then they have to tell their loved ones where they wrote it down.
That's right.
Because I did have one where the person passed away and no one in the family could get into their password keeper. And so they had to redo all the passwords on all the accounts. Of course, after they worked, it had to spend unnecessary time and energy just trying to get into those accounts.
Right.
So you have to have, as my old mentor used to say, Judy always likes suspender and a belt. So you have to write it down. It has to be in a place everybody can find it. I always suggest that my clients keep a password book that they write everything down in, and that they share that with their loved ones or their trusted agents.
Yeah, that's important. I was talking to somebody, they said it had taken 3 years to get into an account that had they had the password would have been a 5-minute deal.
Right.
So yeah, you can save your that's a stress-free legacy if you make sure that this part of it's handled, because so much of what we do these days is digital. You have all these different accounts. So that's really good. And thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely.
So as far as managing your assets under the trust, is that a topic that you could speak on?
Absolutely. So the trust is the big overarching document. It's like creating a corporation for yourself without the formalities of a corporation, and absolutely no independent requirement that you report to anyone unless you create what we call an irrevocable trust. So irrevocable trusts are only used for things like getting assets out of an estate, creating life insurance trusts, and other things. The traditional trust is revocable. And in that revocable trust, the person who creates it, we call them in California the settler creates it, and they manage everything. And it is the settler's social security number. So if I, Judy, create a trust, tomorrow my trust is me with my social security number, no matter what the name is that I give the trust. And I have to manage my assets through that. So I have to put my bank accounts into the name of the trust. I have to make sure critically to put my property in the trust. So I have to have my attorney file a deed that says, well, 123 Main Street is now owned by the Judith Sack Trust, not owned by just Judith Sack. So we have to do all of that to get our assets inside the trust. And then once we do that, we just treat them the way we always do. That's the empowerment part of it. When we are no longer capable of managing, our successor trustees can take over and manage everything because it's inside our trust. If we have an asset that we cannot put in the trust, like a IRA bank account, then we would put a power of attorney on that account, giving our agents the power to manage that particular account if we became incapacitated. So our documents are always working together to support us and provide us with a web of protection. Inside the trust, when I pass away, that asset goes according to my trust. It doesn't ever have to go to probate court because it's owned by my trust. It's not owned by me personally. So that's the beauty of the trust managing our assets. And the trust can manage where we live. It can manage who makes the financial decisions relating to our health care. So for example, I can tell my successor trustee, I want to be at home, even if it means that I'm going to die at home. I want hospice care to come into my house. I don't want to go out. I want you to use every penny in my trust to support me to live at home and die at home. So that's information we can put in our trust. On the other hand, information about how we want to be cared for, whether we want hospice care, whether we want drugs that could make us die faster, whether we want food to be withheld, whether we want extraordinary healthcare measures, whether we want ventilators, resuscitation, or any of those things, that's going to be our advanced healthcare documents. We cannot dictate that in our trust. So each document works together to create a total picture for us.
Yeah. On the POA for managing the IRA asset, is that your general financial power of attorney?
Yes. The financial power of attorney can cover a long laundry list of things. I think it's A through N in the statutory form. which basically just means that everything that you can think of that involves money, you can empower somebody else to do for you.
Okay. I've noticed, so I've been in insurance for a lot of years. I have some older clients with insurance policies, and this one gal, she had a stroke or something, and she's been in a nursing home for like 10 years or more, 10 or more years, and she can't speak. Her husband, goes there every day, God bless him, and he sits there for hours. Anyways, they needed to change the ownership of her policy. And so she had signed over this power of attorney like 10, 12 years ago. And it basically says on there, anything that she can, that she would do, her power of attorney could do. It was very broad. Do you know the insurance company wouldn't take it? They wanted something that specifically said that you can change your life insurance owner on your life insurance policy. Like it had to be that specific. So I'm just wondering if things have gotten different in the last 10, 12 years regard to these general power of attorneys, or if that was just an odd
Well, it depends on what the actual language of the document was.
Mm-hmm.
The statutory form lists each of the categories
Mm-hmm.
that can be covered. And I know specifically it states insurance.
Mm-hmm.
So the current form probably would have undermined the insurance company's position on that. But there could have been other issues going on in those circumstances, and why they didn't want to cooperate and point the person in the right direction, it's difficult to tell.
Yeah.
It could also be that the document's old and they
Mm-hmm.
might have just been concerned that it was 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But that is the kind of thing that the client would have to go to an attorney and have the attorney call them and negotiate with them as to what it is they really need, or go to court and get an order.
Yeah.
But it is important with the insurance policies because, for example, people make mistakes in insurance policies all the time, and that, not casting blame on the agent, the client be making mistakes too.
Right.
And if you catch it before you pass away, that's the best time to fix it, even if the person's incapacitated. So when you're working with your clients, I would highly encourage you to say, every year is a good year to review what's in your file and to make sure the policy information is accurate, because it's a recurring issue for me with my clients that the policy or the bank account informations don't match what they're telling me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just ran across one not too long ago where the ex-wife has the life insurance policy on her ex-husband, and she needed his social security number. So I was going to get it for her because she's the owner of that policy and she needed it. And do you know, we had the wrong social security number on his policy. We had hers listed as the owner and as the insured. So it took, and that was my mistake, but they didn't catch it either. And that was like a mistake that happened 10, 12 years ago. So we were able to look up the older paperwork and it did have the correct information, but it still took weeks. It wasn't an easy fix, like a phone call or anything like that. It took a bit.
Yes, but you were able to catch it and fix it. And if people don't review with their agents what they've done, not necessarily the agent, also the clients. I mean, they don't pick up mistakes like that either. Mistakes in their own birthdays. I've seen that as well. So we just have to be double checking each other. I had one person whose children's names were misspelled on the insurance policy, and the person didn't catch it.
Yeah, I think sometimes people just let the details go. They don't, like, I have an eye for detail. Usually it just pops right out at me, like it just looks odd and it comes to my attention, but I don't think most people do that. And so they'll let things like that go and you think, wow, that you'd realize that your birth date was wrong or something, but they don't. So, so that's one of the lessons in my course. We actually look at all of the beneficiaries, make sure that those people are still who you want to be your beneficiaries. We add beneficiaries to like your accounts that you can add beneficiaries and contingent too. So people a lot of times don't put a contingent beneficiary on, and then that creates a problem if that contingent, if that first beneficiary predeceases you and you never got around to changing it, or they're with you when you go, or
exactly. It is a huge problem. So you're absolutely right. And that's why review is so important. And I encourage everybody to. That is another advantage of those documents. So in the case, unfortunately, of your gentleman, they didn't want to use his power of attorney.
Mhm.
Hard to know exactly why, like I said, in an individual circumstance. But today, the traditional power of attorney would empower your agent while you're still alive to fix these things. And it's crucial, particularly when somebody, like, for example, I have recently acquired a 93-year-old client who has capacity, but we have to play beat the clock to write her documents and make sure that her loved ones are going to be able to help her fix all these things, even if she loses capacity. So you constantly have to work with the individual circumstances of each person to make sure that their trusted team of people, be it family or friends, are empowered and educated as to what they would want their agents to do for them. And that is the critical piece. So they're working with their attorneys, they can figure out, well, here are my beneficiaries, but I really don't want anybody to change my beneficiary designation. So they write that in their documents. You can be my agent, but you can't change my beneficiary designations. And that's a way to protect the person from abuse. It's one of the ways to take the motivation out of abuse,
Right.
which is a big problem. And also helping their agents understand how they want to be cared for. Oftentimes they're afraid to talk to their agents. So this is a way that they can communicate the information if they're reluctant to have the conversation.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of things to consider when you're doing this work. And how often do you suggest people do review their trust and all the documents that they have?
Well, the rule of thumb that we use is what they call the 5 Ds. Every 10 years, if there's a death, if there's a divorce, if there's a enormous change of circumstances in a person's life, you would want to be reviewing the estate plan to see, is it matching what your current goals are? But if there's any changed circumstance, even if you're not, if you're the loved one caring for somebody, that's the best time to start checking the documents to make sure, for example, that everything is up to date. So for example, the work that you're doing with the emergency kit, the emergency info file, that this is, if something happens, it's not just the estate plan, they need to go in and check the info file to make sure everything is up to date. And as I understand that there's going to be opportunities for deeper dives into the information gathering, that's a perfect time for them to review all over again. Has all my information been updated? Did I change anything with my investment company? I have one client where I get inconsistent stories. The client's agents tell me one thing, the client tells me another, and the investment house tells me a third thing. And you need one set agreement. It's what the client wants, and it should be the same across the board. Yeah. And this has been going on, this is 2023 years. So you should always check. I randomly told my clients the other day, every 15 months, review your accounts, get a printout and send it to me. Because that's the only way I can be sure that it's really happening.
Yeah. I know. Well, and the people that really are concerned, I think they do stay on top of it. But there's so many people that just do it once and then think it's done forever. How difficult is it to make just minor adjustments to a trust if you want to change your trustee, your successor trustee?
That's an excellent question. Truthfully, it's not that difficult. Every attorney has a different formula for how they do it for their clients, depending on how the document is written. There's some documents, like I create mine to be easily amended. Some documents require a little bit more effort to amend them, but it's not that complicated a process. The complication often comes in the complexity of what the client wants to achieve. And that often, as a person becomes more sophisticated or has more assets or more concerns, they often want to create something that's a little more complex than from what they did originally. And that can take more effort and require more work to change. We call it amending a trust, creating a codicil for a will, revoking old documents. But There is a procedure that the attorney follows when they do it, and just depending on what the client wants to do determines whether it's simple or complex.
Yeah. And I know that some of the laws that are coming up, they talk about this, what is it? The gifting what is that called?
Gift tax
Exclusions.
exclusion.
Yeah. So it's over 11 million now, right? For a couple.
No, so the inheritance tax exclusion right now is over 11 million per person, but that's only good until 2025.
Okay.
In 2025, all bets are off as to what it's going to be. It could be 5 million again, it could be 3 million, it could be 1 million, or there could be no exclusion. And we won't know until 2025 when Congress acts.
They could really make it nothing?
They can make it nothing. It's up to Congress.
Yeah.
I don't think it's likely to happen that way, but you could have a gap between the law expiring and the new law coming into effect. And that has happened in the past. And then we have a period of time where there's nothing on the books. So nothing on the books means no exclusion. So we're hoping our Congress will be motivated to act quickly.
Yeah, that's a big thing, because I know a lot of the planning wrapped around that idea. And then I guess a lot of people still have these AB trusts that maybe don't even really, they're not valuable any longer. And I don't know. Have you seen that where you want to undo the AB trust thing?
Well, it depends on how the initial trust was written. Most trusts have AB even now because we don't know what the tax code will be in the future. However, flexibility is built in so that the settler, the person who created the trust, when their spouse dies, the surviving settler will decide whether it's necessary to do the AB division. So most attorneys will draft with flexibility to ensure that their clients can maximize whatever's permissible under the tax code at the time of the first death, and at the same time have the greatest power over the use of the assets. But we have to remember that some AB trusts are not written for tax purposes, but for control purposes, depending on how much the deceased spouse wanted to control what was going to happen after they passed away.
I see. Yeah, it gets a little complex. That's why you're the lawyer.
Exactly.
So I always thought if I was going to do that, I might as well be a brain surgeon. The laws change so often. So I went into financial services instead. So
and your laws change all the time too.
They do, but I'm just really interested in it. I mean, it's always been intriguing to me that you can set up mere paperwork and that changes the fate of the assets in the estate, right?
Absolutely.
So it's paperwork that you use to control like this wealth that you've accumulated. And so it's just this like missing link for a lot of people. They don't do that paperwork. And so then everything they've acquired, it's just not transferred well.
It's not transferred well.
Yeah.
Right. And when we die, the law says whatever moment in time the doctor wrote on that death certificate, that's what we own. So whatever was in our own name is going to become our probate estate. And anything that's not in our name, that's in our trust, or it's in an account that says transfer on death, that's going to go outside probate. So it's very confusing for most people. And it's an important point.
Yeah.
But it is a great field, and it's a fascinating field, and I enjoy being able to help people in this way to manage for themselves and protect themselves. And another common misunderstanding that I get from people is people call me and say, well, I don't really have any money. Why do I need an estate plan? And I say, well, you need the trust part of the estate plan to manage for you so that your people don't have to go running to probate court every 2 minutes to get an order deciding what's going to be the future of your assets and your health. So if you put it together in an estate plan, you'll save thousands and thousands of dollars on probate fees while you're alive. This isn't even when you die. And you'll empower the people to help you without running to court. So it's actually really important, even for a person of small means, to create an estate plan and empower the people who are going to help them.
Yes, I agree. And that we can't say that enough because people just, that's the common thing. Oh, I don't have anything, you know. So sometimes people think it's real funny to say, they can have everything I own and whatever, but I don't think they understand that it isn't even all about what you own, right? It's about helping you and your older, if you're not able to help yourself.
Correct. Absolutely. That's exactly the point, that by creating an estate plan, you give them the authority to go in, to be you, to care for you, to manage the assets, to pay your bills. I had one gentleman that was in the hospital for 12 weeks and he couldn't pay his mortgage, right? So the estate plan allows somebody else to pay those bills while you're incapacitated.
Yeah.
And you could be incapacitated for 12 weeks, 2 years, 5 years, and then get better. It
Yes.
happens.
Yes.
So your estate plan is intended to work with you. And if you don't have money, that's the time where you need the estate plan more than ever, because your people can't go to court and spend $60,000 to get a conservatorship and then $5,000 a year to report to the court. And, the fees are just, for a poor person, it's very difficult.
Yeah. Oh boy. Okay. Well, I think we've had a pretty good lesson here. I'll tell you, it's a little overwhelming to a little bit, but I'm always interested to hear about it. It's I always learn something. And today I did learn about the digital assets, a power of attorney for digital assets, which I had never heard of before. So, and then also making sure that you have your security codes written down. That because even if you log in, and correct me if I'm not right on this one, but like, let's say you do have the key, the master to the key, and you can log in. I think sometimes it will ask you anyways for a security, like to update or something. You haven't logged in a long time or something like that. Don't sometimes they ask you for the security
They'll
answers
ask for security sometimes, or they'll ask for a phone, like to text you a code to put in.
more and
There's
more, the two level authentication, a lot of places are,
exactly.
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I was going to mention to you, that if you have your do-it-yourselfers, I know you have some other people who are specialists in these areas, but I would encourage even the do-it-yourselfers. There's lots of resources out there from trusted websites like the California Attorney General's website, from Medicare, from their health insurance, supplemental health insurance providers. There's lots of free resources out there, and they should not hesitate to take advantage of that, particularly in this pandemic. And that it's important that they have healthcare documents, advanced healthcare planning documents in place where they authorize their agents to help them, not just for medical decisions, but for insurance purposes. So you have to be authorized to talk to the insurance company about a bill, because in talking to you about a bill, they actually are disclosing information about your health. Right. So they won't talk to you. So that's the time you need those forms updated and on file with the companies so that your agents can talk and advocate for you. So there are many, many free resources out there. And I encourage all of your listeners to take advantage of those and make use of them.
That's really generous of you too, because I don't think people realize that there are these services. And, sometimes you do have to make a few calls before you get the right person, but it does exist. Judith, how could anybody get a hold of you if they were interested to talk to you further?
Well, thank you. They can always go to my webpage, jmsack.com, or they can email me at jmsack@sbcglobal.net, or better yet, just call my office at 818-914-0668. And of course, they should reference you, Stacey, and this program so I know where they're calling from.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on. That was a lot of information. And actually, I'm going to listen to it again so that I can absorb it all. So, but yeah, I really appreciate it. That's very generous of you. So
thank you. I enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I always like to end my show with invitation to visit the website, www.gotittogethernow.com, and take a look at the online program, the emergency info file. because in my estimation, everybody needs to do it. It's just something that is an act of love. Leaving a stress-free legacy behind for your family there's nothing better than that, because if you've talked to anybody that had a mess on their hands, they would have just loved to have a less stress in their life. So I think with that, I just thank you again, Judith, for being with us today. And I'm going to close out now and see you next time. I'm your financial advocate, Stacey Golden-Lisnock, and just be safe out there. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Legacy Therapy Podcast. If we hit it out of the park today and you learned at least one new thing to take action on in your own quest to planning the best legacy possible, then be sure to tell your friends, subscribe, and rate and review wherever you get your podcast. The show notes will provide the sites and information that were discussed today. You can get more great tips, resources, and inspiration by visiting our website, legacytherapypodcast.com.